各位现场的贵宾、业界先进们，大家好！欢迎您回到2022创意内容大会国际趋势论坛。我们下一场议程的主题是台欧影视合制入门 ，Co-producing with Europe。我们已经邀请到了来自欧洲的影视制作人、市场影剧展代表等等国际级的业界专家已经莅临现场，他们将为我们分析全球的内容产制最新的趋势，也为有意寻找欧洲伙伴的台湾业者来提供建议。在欧洲，影视制作已经发展出一条完善的产业链，包含跨国的资金寻找、建立完整合制机制，以及外销国际的通路等等。那么，台湾的、欧洲的影视产制条件其实是很相近的。但我们应该要如何向欧洲的经验来学习，也带着台湾本土的影视文化来前进欧洲，开拓下一个蓝海市场呢？For this session, we invite key decision makers in the European TV and film market to share their observations on the latest trends in global audiovisual content and their advice to Taiwanese creators and producers on finding partners and audiences in Europe. 那么接下来，我们就要把时间交给本场次的主持人、文化内容策进院的敖翰林顾问。Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the host of this session, the advisor of TAICA, Mr. Aurélien Dirler. 掌声欢迎 ，Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this session on co-production with in Europe and with Europe. I'm very glad that we can host this panel with great panelists today. And I want to start this session by giving a very warm thank you to Laurence Herszberg, the director of series Mania, who came to TCCF with a very high-profile delegation of European professionals. This is following our first participation to Series Mania last March with a delegation of TAICA, with colleagues from TAICA. We went to Lille in March to start a partnership with Series Mania. This was a conversation that was a partnership that was 2 years in the making, or the conversation started 2 years ago, and the idea is to actually accelerate the connections and the opportunities in terms of cooperation and co-production between France, Europe, and Taiwan in the field of TV. Taiwan and Europe have a long history in terms of co-production for film. This is not so much the case in television. And today we have experts from both industries to discuss about the trends and the possibilities, the opportunities, and hopefully provide some very useful insights for you in the audience as how those co-productions happen and how the ties between Taiwan and Europe could be tightened. So to discuss these topics with us today, please give a warm welcome to Laurence Herszberg, the director of Series Mania. On your left and your right, there is also Iris Bucher, who is the CEO and producer at Quad Drama. But Iris is also the president of the French Producers Union, USPA. Welcome, Iris. Next to Iris is Sophie Erbs. She's associate producer at Cinema DEFACTO and producer at GAԻJIN. Welcome, Sophie. And last but not least, Stefano. I guess a lot of you already know Stefano from Volos Film, Taiwan-based Italian producer with a lot of experience in co-production, especially with Europe. So I will start with you, Laurence. We went to Series Mania last March. This is finding a way to connect Taiwan with Europe through Mania is a discussion we've had for the past 2 years. But actually, as the founder and director of the festival, you've been a key observer of all the trends and the evolution of the industry in the past 10 to 12 years. So you've seen the rise of the OTT platforms, you've seen how how series are born, how they are funded, how co-productions happen. And I think maybe we could start this panel by you sharing a bit on this, on what you do as Mania to support, actually provide a platform for series and for people to meet and series to be born. And what do you see in terms of possibilities, in terms of connections with Asia and Taiwan?
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm really happy to be here. And the last few days have been very intense about knowing more about your industry. And I mean, it's really very interesting to be here. Series Mania Festival was founded, something like 10 years ago, but it's been very, very active and powerful since we are outside Paris, in Lille, 1 hour from Paris. Why we created it and why is it so powerful is that, as you might know if you are, from the movie industry, always had a very long history of powerful festival where films can be shown and people can meet. Let's take Cannes, of course, Berlin, Venice, here, Golden Horses, but there was nothing like that in the TV. So now, after 5 years being in Lille, Series Mania is the key event for series to be shown and premiering internationally in an event, and also for a gathering of the business industry. And why is it so important to gather in the same place? It's because for some years now, there is a trend, an increasing trend in both being interested in content coming from very far away countries and local content that can be of some interest for the audience, and also an increasing trend about co-production. First of all, some words about the content. Thanks to the arrival of the OTT platform, and especially Netflix, which was the first one, we are now all over the world used to see content from countries we didn't know about and in other foreign languages. Let's take, I would take an example, a Danish example. I hope the translator will follow me on this one. Borgen. Okay.
Untranslatable.
Borgen. Excuse me?
Untranslatable.
Untranslatable. Borgen is a history, is about the story of the Danish Prime Minister in Denmark. And this content traveled all over the world in Danish, thanks to Netflix. Then I take another example, which is Call My Agent, which is a French show about actors and actresses and their relationship with their agent, and it traveled also in French. And then you have a lot of content like that. So for you guys, in Taipei, you have to know that, first of all, now you have viewers that can be interested in your content in your original language, and that this show has to travel. The second trend is about co-production, and that's why we are here, is that more and more in the TV industry, there are trends in co-producing, whether it's with just normal so-called broadcaster or also with, platforms. And that's very interesting. Either they are originated from the country, about the content, they are organic co-production, and I know that you will develop that a bit further on, or they will be, Sophie, you don't like that when I say industrial, co-production or financial co-production, but it means for you guys that you can find partners elsewhere to co-produce.
And you mentioned organic co-production, and that's the next question actually for Iris. You have a lot of experience in terms of producing content, and you did several co-productions, including one which is called A Perfect Mother, which can be watched on Netflix if you want to check some of the content. I think we should also mention some of the titles, so maybe the audience can check it after the panel. And this is a co-production between France and Germany. And can you tell us how and why like such a co-production happened, and what you think is key for those projects to be structured this way?
Yeah, thank you. I picked up this project specifically because it might be inspiring for you, as The Perfect Mother, which is the title, is what I call, and you said that also, it's an organic co-production. The story which is told in The Perfect Mother is taking place between Paris and Berlin, so between France and Germany. Actually, it's the adaptation of an American novel which was taking place between the United States and Spain. But I could take the story and bring it to other places because it was 100% universal. And this is the second key word for me. It's the universality of a subject. So I give you a quick pitch. The Perfect Mother is the story of a French woman who married a German guy who lives in Berlin. She has 2 children, a 20-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son. And these 2 children are bilingual. They speak German and French. So the daughter went to Paris to study. And when the story starts, the show starts, the mother gets a phone call from Paris, your daughter has been arrested for murder. So of course she at once takes the next plane to go to Paris, because this must be a big misunderstanding. This couldn't have happened. She goes to find her former lover, who became a lawyer, to help her out with this, to make some kind of parallel inquiry to the police inquiry, to sort this out and help her daughter to get out of this situation, which is really very difficult to live through. So this is a French woman living in Germany, going to France, but we also are in Berlin with the husband, the father, who stays there because he has a professional issue, very important. He can't leave at this very moment. And also the son, who is having his final high school exams, so he either cannot leave. And the story is taking place between these 2 countries, mostly in Paris, but we also are in Berlin. And it's universal because, and you said that before, Laurence, this mother, she's a lion. She's doing everything she can to put her daughter out of this situation, and that's what every mother would do if it's in Asia, in Germany, in South America, wherever you go. And that's what I call universal. These stories exist. It's love stories, maybe, these universal stories. You can fall in love with somebody from wherever it might be. It's just a question of chemistry. And yeah.
And that's the perfect example of, a show that could also be adapted here. Because you'll have all this issue, between, I don't know, Taiwan and, Indonesia, or, people, or Singapore or Hong Kong, and, a mother being trapped between the love to her daughter and the fact that she should not lie to the judge. That's universal. And that's what
Exactly.
Makes a story travel, because even if it's very local, from France and Berlin, and those characters are really very specified, the story is universal.
And actually it was, as I said, a French-German co-production. It was TF1, the biggest private broadcaster in France, and ZDF, which is a huge public broadcaster in Germany. But I did this show together with Netflix, which makes it on Netflix today, and so you can watch it if you like. But also it's interesting that Netflix decided to help me finance the show, because they had the same impression that this would be a show which could travel around They have, I don't know, 180 countries where you can watch shows on Netflix. And it actually happened. It's recent, it's like several months ago. And it was #1 on Netflix worldwide for several weeks, or at least 2 weeks. And then it dropped a bit. But I mean, I want to get back to something you just said, because the other thing which could be interesting for you and us is the remake. When you have these universal stories, could be your stories, could be our stories, you can pick them up and make them your stories in your country with your specific cultural identity. But if it's a universal story, then you can go wherever you want. That's what I just said. And I'm very interested in the idea of watching shows you did and see if I can find this universal thing and take it to France. I did that 3 times. I did the remake of an American show, of a Spanish one, and of a Gaelic one. Gaelic one is a very small part of England. And it's all about universality. So,
just before we continue with other cases and other configurations of co-productions with Sophie, I just want to go back to Laurence, because we're going to send a delegation of Taiwanese professionals to Series Mania next year and hopefully every year. And maybe you can say very briefly, what do you offer at the forum, which is the industry section of Series Mania, to accompany such projects and co-production?
First of all, I would like, in the festival part, where we screen, international show, I would very much like to welcome a Taiwanese show next year. And we've been gathered, meeting with some producers, and they might have some shows that I could bring to the festival. For the forum is really the international place to be, to make contacts. And as we all, when we were preparing this session just a few minutes ago, we were said everything is about networking and having the right contact. So at the forum, it's the gathering place and the networking place for international drama. First, we have at the forum this co-production pitching session where, people send projects when they need to have, co-producers or broadcasters to finalize the budget. Last year, we received 394 projects. We select 15 from all over the world. We invite them to come, they pitch, and generally speaking, they find the right partner there. So far, we have, a very high rate of co-productions being really realized or at Series Mania, which is 35%, which is really very important as it's an ongoing process. Then we have also writing the residencies. When you want to work on an international level, you have to adopt, to be able to work in the international language, to know what the platform need, what a network, what an international series means. So we have Writers Campus, where script writers from all over the world again can apply, and they have a workshop, a 2 weeks workshop, and then they can pitch their work at Series Mania. Now we have some working residencies, and we just recently created a project called Series Makers to have filmmakers to help them make their first series. They come, they apply. We received 170 projects. We select 10 from all over the world. Those were people who had films selected in A-list festival, Golden Horses, Berlin, Cannes, Venice, Busan, etc. And they have workshops how to write for dramas. And that's something, making some people from the cinema, also try to work into series, and having both worlds connect is something that we do at Series Mania.
I really like what Iris just said about like those organic co-productions, and the case of Perfect Mother is a really good case of a universal story. It's like you can really imagine that it could totally take place in Asia, in Korea, in Japan, as you said, anywhere. In recent months, we've seen actually quite a lot of co-productions taking place in Taiwan. Some major films, I'm thinking of Rashid Ami's For My Country, which was premiered in Venice and which was shot in Taiwan. 45 minutes of the film take place in Taiwan. It was invested by Taika. I know that today the feature film, the latest feature film of world-renowned director Abderrahmane Sissako, it's wrapping today in Taipei after 6 weeks of shooting. This is a different case because in this situation, like the movie, the project was actually meant to be shot in China, and eventually, well, they had to change their plans and come to Taiwan, and they found partners. They got support from Taika, from Taipei Film Commission, from Kaohsiung. So we see a lot of different configurations. Another film in Venice, The Last Queen, which was absolutely not shot in Taiwan, but still supported by Taika because the talents involved in the film were those doing the post-production. And that's also a very important part of the project. So maybe Sophie and Stefano, if you want, you can give us a few examples of, Sophie, you've already produced a film in Taiwan, and I know you're coming back with many more projects, and you have a clear plan. And can you share a bit what's your motivation, and tell us a bit more about the projects, the ongoing projects?
Yes. So Iris shared a perfect example of what we call an organic co-production, where inside the stories there's a content that clearly belongs to two different territories. But there's another aspect of co-production that Europe has been investigating since the last 20 years, and we're already very accustomed working within each other. It's the industrial co-production. I call it industrial more than financial, because I believe our cinema is both an art and an industry. But I also believe that the industrial part of cinema is not less artistic, because the quality of the films that we do depends on the quality of the industry people that actually work on the films. So the quality of the teams that is behind the screen is also key if we want to do high quality products and contents to tell these stories. And sometimes we can tell a story that belongs only to one territory by the content, but it's being made by creators who belong to many countries. So it's been already a long time we've been doing it within Europe. So we have all the tools. And for me, it's a custom when I do a film to call the best collaborators from all over Europe. I call Polish editors, Polish DOPs, because they're very well known. I will call very good Spanish composers. And this way we make films that have these standards of quality. And it's something very new that I've discovered here, because I came here before to shoot a story that was organically within the story between France and Taiwan. But because I came here before, I discovered this new program that I think is unique, that Taika has put in place, that is the TICP, and that is now allowing us to benefit of the talent of the Taiwanese people, not only in the shoot part, but also in the post-production. And I think it's unique in Asia. I don't think there's many other countries within the world that has what we call in Europe minority co-production scheme, that is basically financing and support for me to come with directors to bring them here and to benefit of the talent of the industry, of the Taiwanese industry. So now we're coming in 2 weeks. There's a Romanian director who's won a Golden Bear, he won a Silver Bear. He's going to come here in 2 weeks. He's going to do the color grading in Taipei. Afterwards, we have another Swedish South African director living in Berlin who was in competition in the Berlinale, who's going to come here and work with auditorium from here, with a composer from here. And this is, for me, a very, very interesting approach. Again, it's unique. And it's a great way to mix, because we were talking all the time about the content, but the content is idea, the content is creativity, and the creativity is not coming out of staying within your own territory. The creativity is actually always about mixing. And of course, when I come here, I meet all of you and I come back with your own project. So there is the reciprocity. This is a key word when you do co-production. It's not only about me coming with my talents, thanks to you. It's also about then your talents coming and raising the financing from Europe. And that's something that I believe is key if we want to elevate all the levels of our industry.
How did you find about the contacts here, coming from Europe? How did you do that?
Finding the content?
No, the contacts, you know, the right
contacts.
people to work with.
This is...
So let's move to Stefano. Stefano, well, we know each other for many years, and you're always the bridge between Taiwan and France, Taiwan and Europe. You've had so many co-production projects. Can you tell us like how and why like those projects happen? Can you tell us a bit more about your work in that aspect?
Yes, of course. As Sophie was saying, I think co-production is always, when we enter into a co-production for us, it's never about one film or one project, but it's really about creating relationships that can last over many years and many projects. So some of the projects that Sophie mentioned, you know, we are working together. And these platforms, like here and these schemes, is exactly what allows us to build these connections. So for example, we are here because we know that there's this TICP and the TAICA support for our projects. But that is just the beginning and the key that starts the relationship. And then the important part that Sophie was talking about is also the artistic approach that we have to the project, which means that we are not just working together because of our financial needs, but because we know that artistic collaboration can make our projects travel more and become better. So through co-production, we can make sure that audiences from other countries can understand better the contents that we work on. And by bringing the talents from Europe to Taiwan and from Taiwan to Europe, we also try to create bridge for them to know more about what's happening outside or what is happening here. And that is something that I think it's really the core of why we do co-production.
I think what's interesting is that we can see that there's been some sort of a long history in terms of co-production, at least for the film industry. Of course, with big authors, big names such as Hu Xiaoxian, Simon Yang, who got some French investors, and we see that for more independent cinema, there's been a lot of things going on as well, even before TAICA was established, because TAICA is a very young agency. But for television, it's kind of a very different situation because in the past decades, probably Taiwan was more like, for television at least, aiming at Chinese market or Chinese-speaking territories. And things started to change maybe a few years ago with the rise of the OTT platforms. I remember like Netflix started to come, shoot, produce here Chinese-speaking content with public television actually, and they don't have access to the Chinese market, so that's very interesting. They still need Chinese-speaking content because there is still an audience in those territories and also like all around the world, in the States, in Europe, the diaspora, so you need this content, and I think that's what actually started this pivot somehow, like that, to open something and make people realize that actually there is, you know, like also this possibility to do co-production. And I think at TAICA, when we went to series Mania, it's because we see that there is an opportunity, because actually we realize that less and less people are willing or able to work with China. And we also realize that the way the industry is structured in Taiwan is very similar actually to what we see in France and Europe. For instance, there is support from the Ministry of Culture, there is tax rebate, there is film commissions, not only in Taipei, but in Kaohsiung and in other cities. And now there is TAICA with different fundings, which are a bit similar to what you find at CNC. And that's when we decided, like, oh, we should go actually talk to Laurence and Francesco and their team and see what we can do to, I don't know, start building something and try to see if there is an opportunity to position Taiwan as a hub for co-production for television. But that's obviously, it's different from film, because film, there is things are going on, and for television, it's very new. So what maybe, I don't know, Laurence, Iris, or even you, Stefano, because you have experience also in television. What do you think is the next step? What is necessary to establish this connection for television?
Coming here,
Yeah.
exchanging with you guys, because it's true, we don't know, at least I don't know much about Asia. I'm starting to learn a bit about the way you are producing. We went to studios, we met a lot of producers, and actually I'm feeling that even if it's far away, it's quite similar. And you're working the same way that we do, so why couldn't we do something together?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. What I would like to say, of course, I mean, I'm talking about my festival. It's not because it's a festival. It's because it's really the gathering point of the industry. And Francesco, who is, here on the first row with the head of the forum, is really making everything to have people from around the world coming to make the right connection. What I need first, because it's true that we know, and you're doing, guys, a lot of films, we do know, and you mentioned, big names and Fang, etc., etc. We know about the movie industry here and your talents here. You're less known about your dramas. And that's something. Now we have to push the dramas to the international level of knowledge within our industry. First of all, I really need in the festival to show a Taiwanese series. That will help a lot. So if you have, in the audience, if you have series ready, please, feel free to connect, to apply. Then you're right, it's about connection. Yesterday, we were part of these pitching sessions. You have a lot of stories to tell. We listen to a lot of romantic comedies. That is something which is very much developed here, very interesting, but more aiming at the Chinese market in the way they are told, which is not a problem. But if you want to have those rom-coms, come to more European or American market, you have just to adapt them a bit slightly. You have all these fantasy stories, which are very new to us, very also interesting. And then you have a lot with a more political background or social issues, and that's connect to everywhere in the world. So what I think is that if you're looking for international co-production, you have to find the right way to tell your stories. We had some. Do you want to take the example of the show that the project that I don't remember the name because I keep saying.
We participated at the pitching session, and there was one pitch I liked a lot because I'm always getting back to this word. It's kind of universal. It's a story about two women working in the same company but not knowing each other that well. And for whatever reason, one of the two girls gets into the coma, and when she wakes up, she's in the body of the other woman, and she stays in this body for a fortnight, and then she gets back to her own body, and the same thing happens to the other woman. So this means that you are a person, and tomorrow morning I wake up and I'm in Sophie's body, and I will live 100% different life from my life, which is amazing, interesting, and so dazzling, because of course you're not at all prepared for that. And that makes it universal, because this pitch was a Taiwanese story, but I could tell the same between Sophie and me in France.
Yeah.
Or between Laurence and me. I don't know.
You better stay in your body. Not really.
I wanted to add something before I forget about what you just said. There is an important game changer since like 5 years now. This is the streamers, of course. We all know that. And you really need to understand that this changed so much, because there are contents from all over the world coming to us. And Yeah, I will take the most recent and spectacular example, which is Squid Games. This was such a huge success all over the world. I mean, I watched Squid Games in the Korean version with French subtitles, and lots of people do that, which means that we start to get new ways of watching shows and appreciating something which comes from, as I said before, very far away countries. And we thought probably before that these are two far away cultures, but they're not, because so many people like the show. It's very particular, and I think we couldn't have produced this show in France, but it actually found its public all over the world. And there's no reason why this couldn't happen to Taiwanese content.
Yeah, and I will take another example and something totally different. We were talking about this project, about those two women swapping bodies. And you said it's a universal topic, we meaning that this Taiwanese show could have some remakes all over the world. The project we chose, and that is going to be officially invited, thanks to Taika, to Series Mania Festival, is something totally different. It's more very local. It's called Judoka, and it's this project about, I'll try to pitch it rightly. Okay, this is those two judoka. You have a Taiwanese guy who was, very big in the judoka area and was a champion, who is slightly less a champion now, and who is, trying to still be someone in this industry. And he meets, in an international competition, a North Korean judoka woman, and they fall in love. So you have the Taiwanese guy, being used to be a champion, and this rising girl from North Korea. And just to meet and to have their love affair, develop, they have to win the competition. The next competition takes place in Belgrade, and the Taiwanese guy wins, but the North Korean girl fails, confronted to a South Korean woman, and she's sent to camp. And this is very local, this story, but it's something universal. It cannot be really adapted, but we can all watch, I hope, the future show. Why? Because you have something that everyone knows about, the geopolitical situation in North Korea. Everyone knows about it. You have a great arena, which is sport. That's something that is, and judo, that's something that can be really very easily put on screen. And then you have a love affair. And those two young people, one is 22, the other one is 18, something like that, fighting for their freedom and love. So we have two directions. The one that we spoke, you can have remakes done about, from starting from Taiwanese content, and judoka can be screened everywhere, just within, in the Taiwanese style, the original production.
Yes, you were talking about something I love very much, which is, I call it the Romeo and Juliet situation.
She's looking for romantic comedy all over the world.
Yeah, I love that. That's impossible love, and that's also something which travels all over the world, because it's so heartbreaking when you are with these two characters from the show Laurence just pitched. We want them to be together. That's the principle of the romantic comedy. And it works. It always worked, and it still does. And it can be from everywhere. We feel with these persons because we would be so happy to make this story work.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're talking too much.
I actually have another question for you, but I really need to move forward and go back and forth between film and television. And I think one of the very important questions I wanted to ask during this panel is, given both your experience, like Stefano, you've been here for 12 years, you've made dozens of projects in different formats. Sophie, you have this one experience that we mentioned, but several projects going on. The situation in Taiwan, that's also something we said when we were in Lille. We met people that we knew before, and we said the situation in Taiwan nowadays is very different from I don't know, if you came to Taiwan even 3 or 4 years ago, it's already very different because Taika was established, there's a lot more support and also a lot more awareness, you know, in terms of the opportunities for Taiwan to connect with international partners and especially with Europe because it's compatible. Also, I think there is an awareness of Taiwan being one of the few places in Asia with so much freedom of expression, with zero censorship. So a lot of very positive things are happening, but what do you need? What would you say are the next steps? I mean, Stefano, you've done so much, so what is required to make this something sustainable and to make it grow? And Sophie, even if I'm sure you get a lot of support, what else do you need to make it a success?
Well, like you mentioned, I think a lot has changed in Taiwan in the past 3 to 4 years. But for the projects that we work on, 3 to 4 years, it's really a very small step and small stage. So for us, definitely, like the possibilities of co-production being on a longer span of time is something very crucial. That, you know, all these funds and opportunities are staying for a longer time is something that is very important for us. And then on the other hand, because these 3 to 4 years, we have tried to grow local talents and let them understand how it is to work with people from other countries. To make an example, one of the projects that I recently worked on was a Filipino horror, and it was shot in the Philippines, but the whole of post-production, including the edit, was done in Taiwan. And the Taiwanese editor had never worked on an international co-production, never worked in English, and I convinced him. I had to talk to him a lot because I knew he was a good editor, but he was really afraid of starting this kind of cooperation. And when the director came here to start edit with him, they started edit and they found out that even if there was a small language barrier, they could actually work together because they were thinking in artistic terms in the same way. And that is very important for us, that if these schemes are kept on, this will not just become one-time experience for him, but now I can convince him that, you know, he can make even bigger projects when collaborating with countries from abroad. So this is really something that it's important for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the concretization, because there's the universal idea, there's the universal story, but making things concrete is always the harder in our industry. Going from a script and an idea to actually something on screen, it's a long journey, it takes energy, it takes time, it takes talent and money. And I think now we're in the phase, I mean, personally, I'm in the phase where we're going to start to see the first concretizations. What is interesting is that I came here for the first time in 2019 because of a project we are going to shoot here next year, who came to Taiwan for a matter of liberty. It's a project we cannot shoot in its origin country. Here, there's liberty of speech, there's liberty of sexuality. So we are actually welcome to shoot that film. Thanks to that film, I came here 3 years ago, met Stefano, and I'm here today, and I have 3 other projects coming. And I think the same thing will happen with my directors. The same thing will happen with my teams, that they will come here, and they will create these relationships. So the next film, they will be working already with the teams that they've met here. And this is because there is a structure. There is institutions. So we have people we can talk to, and so it's very important that the people we can talk to talk also to our institutions. So this kind of gatherings, this kind of meeting where we're coming, the sensei is coming, are very important, because then we come back home and I go to the sensei and I tell them the sensei is the French National Center of Cinematography, is one of the most powerful institutions of cinema in Europe and probably in the world. And I tell them, like, we have great partners in Taiwan. You need to go and talk with them. And actually they're here because they know. And then they help us make the film. So this notion of having the support is key. I think the reason why Europe has kept a cinematography that is still strong is because there was a political will to make culture something important, to defend culture and to defend the national culture. And when I say to defend the national culture, it's not that France is only defending the French culture. I think through the co-production scheme, we are defending every country's right to have their own culture. And from the moment that each country is doing the same, in a way we're defending also a more global language than the one of the language we talk, where we're discussing about the language of art, and we are also allowing this porosity between us, between the films, between the talents, and I think we live a very interesting moment of porosity. All my directors working from film are doing series. And I think you created Series Maker, which is about filmmakers coming from the cinema industry now doing series. And I think our industry is mostly about that. It's about sharing. And that's why I think those kind of meetings are great.
And just to jump in on this concept of porosity, because Taiwan, we all know that politically it has been very hard to find a way to co-produce with Taiwan, because of course there is the importance of co-production treaties that cannot be put in place. But on the other hand, these events that allow institutions to talk to each other, it's really what enables us then to build the platforms for us to build the co-production. So actually, even though there is no maybe official co-production treaty, but there are these talks going on that we know what is happening in the other country, and that is exactly how we build this relationship.
I thanked Laurence and Francesco, but I forgot to thank the CNC, and actually the CNC has been very supportive of this partnership between Taika and Series Mania. And I think it's important to mention it because it means something, because there is no treaty, probably not going to be any treaty anytime soon, but this is not everything. What matters is where people see the opportunity, where they see shared values, and this is also, I'm sorry, I think it's important to share about this because when we went to Lille in March, I think like my colleagues, I know a few colleagues were with me in Lille, and why we feel that that was an important moment is that it was also a test for us. Like we met, thanks to you, we met so many people during the forum from different like OTT institutions, independent production companies, conglomerates of studios, and we were really trying to understand, like, are they interested? Are they looking for a partner in Asia? And the feedback has been overwhelming positive. It's been a lot more positive than what we could have imagined, and that says something about like the connection that is possible to build with Taiwan. And in that sense, this partnership is instrumental. But what I understand in everything you say, most of you, when I ask what can be done, what's actually important to make it sustainable or make things happen, it's really about the human connection. Actually, if I understand correctly.
That's key, as you say, because when you develop a TV show, from the very first moment you are working on the project and the very end when it's broadcasted, it's minimum 2 years, probably 3. So you need to feel. I mean, it's like a love story.
Here she comes again.
No, you need to be happy to work with these people. So you need to meet, and we talked about that before, not only Zoom meeting, but you have to definitely encounter the persons that you might work with afterwards, because it's a very close relationship working on a project together, sharing artistic point of views, sharing financial difficulties, concrete difficulties on a shooting, whatever that might be, but most of you know what I'm talking about. And so it's all about human contact, of course.
I mean, just to have the possibility to have a beer together will help, will tremendously help the connection.
Or do a karaoke.
I mean, we did a karaoke yesterday. She's the queen of the karaoke, I must say. Yes, and that's why you need to travel, or thanks to those guys, who come here and know everyone about, and your industry, we still need to connect. We had the impression that this COVID situation will tremendously change the way we work in this industry, and that we will do that, only through Zoom connections. And it doesn't work. At some point, we have to meet. We have, just...
It helps.
It helps. We need to have a physical connection at the beginning. Then you do Zoom meetings. Then you do Zooming. But first, we have to connect. we have, just to laugh together. And I must say that you're really so nice people. You have a funny sense of humor. I mean, you're just great people, to work with. But we need to connect first. And that's what you just said, Sophie. I mean, thanks to Stefano, you had the right connection. You met the people here. Then, that's true. Then we can, work through Zoom. That's fine.
Perhaps we should go to the questions, because there was somebody showing us that we have not that much time left.
We have 10 minutes left.
He wants to be the moderator now.
No, I'm sorry.
He wants to do everything.
I had one last question for you, though. Okay, like the way things are structured right now, as I mentioned, like Taika did and does invest in all sorts of projects. And those projects are not always original stories from Taiwan. Actually, far from that sometimes. But this is, like, in my opinion, like co-production. This is something we discuss a lot internally. This is a shortcut. It's like if you ask me, how do you put, Taiwan content like on the world map? I would tend to think like, okay, you do co-production, and that's the first step, because it's not about the content that has already been made. You start to build those connections, and then like the end goal, of course, I guess from Taika's perspective, is to co-develop stories together. And we start actually to have partners who come to us and say, it's very interesting actually, some of the people who funded the film by Abderrahmane Sissako, they discovered in the past 3 years Taiwan and the ecosystem, and they came to us and they said, look, like what we could do is actually invest, like in very early stages, and we develop stories together, like with French and Taiwanese writers. We can put a little bit of money, and the idea is that we write stories which work, which are universal, and which can work both in Asia and in Europe. So my last question is about this. If you were to take, if you were to work on Taiwanese-initiated project or Taiwanese story with Taiwanese elements, like would you rather, are you looking for like a good story, like attending the pitches, or actually is it something that you can do also to start very early stage and develop stories together?
Can I give the example of, we created with Francesco the French-Israeli writing residency. That might be a good example that of what, and it's exactly the contrary that I just said, because, okay, we wanted Israeli, we all know about the Israeli drama, and they are very good dramas. And we decided to have this Israeli writing residency. So we launched a call for project. It can be either Israeli or French, but I mean, they have to be told in a way that from the beginning you think that an international audience can be interested in your project. And then on a Facebook group, you offer your project to, when you're Israeli, to a French writer, or when you're French, to an Israeli writer. And then you'll have two, you connect online, you talk online, we select the project, and then we have 2 workshops. One taking place in Tel Aviv or Haifa, and one at the end taking place at Series Mania in Lille, and then you'll pitch your project. So it means that from the start, there is an international couple of writers writing on the same idea, the idea coming either from one country or another. That could be an example of something we could do between Taiwan and Europe. It doesn't have to be really totally French, but between Taiwanese writer and a European writer.
Yeah, I'd like to add that, I mean, for me, and I'm not saying this to flatter you, but I think this is the right approach. And we're the proof of it. First, we are doing it naturally, because it's not because I call it an industrial co-production that there's not always the artistic that is the main goal. So whenever we work together on a project, even though I come here to do the post-production, Stefano is sending notes, his collaborators are sending notes, and we take them early on from the development. And then we discuss about the project that Stefano carries as a Taiwanese producer from Taiwanese talent. And we're talking about the fact that we could actually work together on 1 or 2 feature films from Taiwan that I would be producing from Europe, and we'd be doing the same, that I'd be sending my notes. And whenever we need a position, whichever, Sometimes the position is a co-writer, and there's a need for writers all over the world. Then I ask him, do you have someone good? Because stories are universal, so I really don't care where the co-writer comes from, as long as he's good. If it's a composer, then I ask him, and he asks me. That's the way we actually work, and sometimes that's also where the co-production arises from. On this film we're going to shoot here, there's a Singaporean director that's going to be shot here, mainly produced by Stefano and me. We have a Polish editor. Why? Because I worked with a Polish editor on a South African film, and she's great. So we needed someone, the one we had was taken, so we called our friend in Poland, and now we have the Polish Film Institute working. So that's the way that we build the constellation. And it starts with, and I mean, in the end, we remain producers. It starts with an incentive, and that incentive, of course, is the money. It doesn't need to be so huge to cover everything, but it's still an incentive that is making us turn our head. Oh, things are happening in Taiwan. There is funds, there is an institution, there is political desire to make it happen. So we have good interlocutors that we can talk to. There is funding, there is a great industry, and by doing it, we are shaping it. We are structuring the industries in parallel by doing it. But of course, it comes from the incentive, and that's key.
I think The Perfect Mother, I could have produced it as a French-Taiwanese co-production, because in that point, it could have been a Taiwanese mother living in France with a French husband, and her bilingual child goes to Taipei to study, and then she gets a phone call, your daughter has been arrested for murder, and she takes EVA Airlines, that's to go to Taiwan and sort it out. So,
and she met a Taiwanese lover, which obviously
is very important for me.
Yeah, very
yes.
good.
And for this kind of configuration, I would totally need a Taiwanese writer, because I don't know how things work here. I don't know how the jurisdiction system works and how people react to that kind of situation. So this would be a possibility. It's already been done, I'm sorry, but there will be other stories.
Okay, we have a few minutes left for questions. Is there any question? Yes, there are. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the first question is the European Union provides many audiovisual incentives. Can Taiwan make use of them? Does it help when cooperating with European partners? So that's a pretty technical question.
Say it again.
EU provides many audiovisual incentives. Can Taiwan make use of them? Can they apply, I guess?
Yes.
That's the question. And does it help when cooperating with European partners?
Yes, of course. The perfect example is that film we're going to shoot here as the support of the European Union, because we carried the project. The key word, I said it before, is reciprocity. I don't think, that's why I don't like the word financial. Financial has a colonialist sensation to it, whereas I think industrial cooperation has a sense that it goes in both sides, because it's the only way it can go. So yes, we do have incentive. France is probably the country on which we have the most, and they are open. We have development funds that we can raise for Taiwanese projects. Not a lot, but we do have, and it's non-related to language, nor territory or nationality. We do have European Union support, and the main thing you need for that is to find a good producer in Europe who wants to support your vision and your story. And then all over Europe, we have what we call minority funds for production. Development is a bit more difficult, is a bit more located yet, and there's a huge move now in Europe to emphasize co-development. There's a very brand new grant from the European Union that can be given for any 2 countries from the European Union collaborating. So that means there's really an emphasis being given now on development. For production, it's been already existing for many years, and you can find what we call minority funds. And so that means you can find any country from Europe that can finance your film, the same way that Taika is financing the post-productions of my film here. You can come and get financed your post-production. In most of the country of Europe, you will find these schemes.
And sorry, just to add, because coming from a Taiwanese industry background, I think it's, again, important to stress that this collaboration is for us to be artistic in the beginning, and there has to be an exchange on that. It's not just about going to Europe to apply for some funds to make what you want to do in Taiwan. It's really about building something that can travel in between the two countries, and that only comes through development. And sometimes, because from a Taiwanese background, sometimes I get from the filmmakers the fear that collaborating with Europe might change the project. But actually, again, it's very important to stress that your partners are here to make the artistic decision and let your project become more viable for audiences in two places. So that's something that it's really important to stress, that it's not just, again, financial, it's really about development of something coherent and artistic together.
And the second question, which is quite interesting, with recent inflation and international circumstances dissuade European players from seeking international co-production, especially from Asia. Do you think the situation right now,
I don't think so.
tensions?
I don't think so, because if we start to think like that, then we can just go home and stop working. So no.
We simply have to work with what the situation is. I mean, we've worked through COVID, so why can't we work through inflation?
So time is up. Thank you so much for all these
Thank you.
very
Thank you for
useful
listening.
information. Thank you for participating.